Well, hello there, watch friends. My name is David, and today I want to show you how to correctly set your mechanical watch. Now I know you are probably perfectly able to set your own watch already, but there are a few details to consider if you are interested in keeping the longevity of your watch. Remember, the movement in a watch is a very, very delicate thing. And there are things you can do to your watch when setting it that might have a negative influence on the performance of the movement or even outright damage it. So I'm here to tell you all about it. And because watches come in many different shapes and sizes and colors, and of course also with many different movements, I've brought 3 different watches today, representing the most common movement types you will find in mechanical watches. Now we're gonna start with the Hulk over here. Now this is an automatic watch, meaning it has a mechanical movement equipped with a little weight called the rotor that is spinning around when you move your wrist, and therefore transferring the kinetic energy of your body movement into the movement of the watch. It's tightening a spring that is releasing that power to the movement, and therefore as long as you move this thing around every now and then, the watch will never stop ticking. Also, it is equipped with a screw-down crown that you typically find with watches that are meant to be worn in the water because it gives the watch an improved water resistance. So before setting a watch with a screw-down crown, of course you have to undo the screw. Now, to undo the screw, you always need to turn the crown counterclockwise, or think of it as turning it towards yourself. So you start turning towards yourself until you hear the crown pop out. All right. Now you are in the winding position. This might be an automatic watch that winds itself, but if it's resting for an extended period of time, it will of course stop going. Now you could basically just slap it on the wrist and start moving around, and eventually the movement would start to work too, but this could take some time. So there is still a winding position for you to fire this baby up. Now, for winding this movement, you have to go in the opposite direction of opening the crown. So now you go clockwise, or you turn the crown away from you. So you do that, and you should hear the tightening of the spring. It's a distinct clicking sound you can hear when you wind it. Now, as I said, this is an automatic movement. It is meant to work just with the kinetic energy of your body, of your movements. It is not meant to be charged fully by turning the crown. So what you want to do is only turn it as long as it takes until the seconds hand start ticking. When you see the seconds hand moving, you should stop. Now usually for this watch to start working, it takes somewhere between 20 to 30 full rotations of the crown. So once it's going, you can set the time. Now for setting the time, there are 2 positions. Well, actually there's 1 position for the time and 1 position for the date. So if you pull out the crown, you're in the first position, which is the date position. Now, little tip here. Usually people pull the crown out like this. So like they grab from both sides and pull. Now, if you do that, what can happen is that the stock that is attached to the crown could be bent a little if you're not careful. So what I always do is this. I go from top and bottom in with my fingernails and kind of use them like a lever, pressing against the crown and on the other side against the crown guards. So this way I'm actually not grabbing the crown, I'm just lifting it up with my nails, and therefore I reduce the amount of bending to the stock. So anyway, now in position number 1, you can set the date. but only in one direction, which is up. So you again go in clockwise direction here, turn away from yourself, and you see the date starts moving. Now when it comes to setting the date, there's a rule. And that rule says you should not set the date between 9 and 3 o'clock. Now why is that? Your watch will automatically change the date when it reaches midnight. Now what you don't want to do is intervene with this process when it's close to happening or shortly after. So let's say it's 5 minutes to midnight. Now you don't want to switch the date because the watch is almost ready to do it by itself. Also 5 minutes after midnight, the mechanism has just done its work and you shouldn't intervene. Now this period where you should not switch the date manually extends to 3 hours before and 3 hours after, they say. This is why the rule is only set the date manually when your hour's hand is in the lower portion of the dial, between 3 and 9 o'clock, down here and not up here. Alright, with that out of the way, let's go to setting the time. Now to set the time, you need to pull out the crown once more to get it in the third position. Remember, first one was winding, second one was setting the date, and finally the third position is setting the time. So you pull out the crown once more, and now you're in the time setting position. Now you see the seconds hand has stopped moving. This is because this movement is a hacking movement, meaning, well, you pull out the crown to set the time and the movement basically stops. So now you can set the time. Here in this position, you can turn the crown both ways. If you turn it away from yourself, the time will advance. If you turn it in the other direction, well, it'll go in the other direction. Now again here, if you want to be on the safe side and don't mess with the changing of the date, always go forward, never backwards. Now, speaking of the date, what I usually do is the following. So let's say right now the time is 8 o'clock in the morning, AM, so we have to go from 5 to 8. Now, what I don't know at this point is whether my watch is displaying 5 o'clock AM or PM. Unless there's an indication on the dial, which some watches have, this one hasn't, there's no way for me to tell if it's set on AM or PM. But it is important because it has an influence on switching the date. If you set it wrong, the date will switch at noon instead of midnight. So what I always do in such a situation is this. I want to go from 5 to 8, but I don't know if it's AM or PM here in the watch setting. So I just keep turning until it passes 12 and I watch the date window. You saw that? It changed. Now I know my watch right now is on AM because it just passed midnight. So what I do now is basically just do this extra rotation, set it on 8 o'clock. Now I know this is 8 o'clock AM and we're good. One more thing with the hacking movement. What I always do, because I want my time to be set very, very precisely, I wait until the seconds hand is exactly at 12 o'clock. Now I missed it by 4 seconds, but that's all right. And then I can set the time exactly to the position of an index. I keep my cell phone close by, watch the time there, and as soon as the time reaches 8 o'clock and 3 minutes AM, I push the crown back in and the watch is working again. Now, last thing to do here is to close the crown. You do that by pushing it inside, and while you're applying pressure, you turn it clockwise, so away from you. And you will feel the screw catch, and then you can release pressure and just tighten it. All right, and there we go. That's the automatic watch with a screw down crown. Now next we are going to talk about the Hamilton here. This is a hand-wound watch. So there's no rotor inside. Moving this watch around will not do anything to it. There's a power reserve, a spring, same as in the automatic version, but here you will be the one doing the job by, winding it by hand basically. Also, this watch does not have a screw-down crown, meaning you don't have to open it. It is already in the first position, which is the winding position. So again, to wind it, you turn it clockwise, so away from you. And usually the hand-wound movements are a bit louder than the automatics, so you can hear that pretty good here. Now, contrary to the automatic movement, you want to wind this thing until it's full. So you want to wind it until it stops. It is made for this. You will not damage your watch if you fully wind it, if it's a hand-wound movement and not an automatic movement. However, if you really tried, you could still damage it because, after all, very delicate little parts inside. So what I always do is, basically you could be very attentive and you would feel when you get close to the end, you would feel it get a little bit harder to turn. But this is really a very delicate difference. So what I do is I just grip the crown very loosely. Therefore, I don't have to go slow in order to not miss the right point to stop. I can go fast, but I grip it very loosely. So I go fast, but very loose. And now I already reached the end point and my hands are just slipping over the crown and I'm not applying too much pressure here. All right, now it's fully wound and should be good for another few days. To set the time, it's the same procedure. I pull out the crown. I'm in the first position. Second position if it would be an automatic watch. Here it's the first, which is the date setting. Now we are not in the danger zone, so I could set the date right away if I know if the watch is in AM or PM mode. I don't know yet, so I pull it out once more and we are in the time setting position. You see this is also a hacking movement. The seconds hand has stopped going around. So now I set the time. Now see here, there's another difference. If I turn clockwise here, the time goes back. If I turn counterclockwise, it advances. This is the opposite that we saw with the other movement. So you see, there are many different types of movements around. So I'm gonna set the time. I wanna pause 12 o'clock to see if it's AM or PM. All right. Date window has changed, so now I know I'm in AM mode. I'll turn it to 8 o'clock AM. Back in position number 1 to set the date. Now I can set the date. Let's say it's the 20th. Push it back in and we are good to go. That's the hand-wound movement. Now, last but not least, we're gonna take the Patek to show you how a non-hacking movement works. Same as the Rolex, this is an automatic movement with a date window, but the difference is that this is not hacking, it's a non-hacking movement. So let me show you what that is. It also has a screw-down crown, so open the crown, pops out. Now I pull it out. First position is the date. Second position is the time. Now we are in the time setting position, but you see the movement is still going. So you can change the time, but your movement doesn't stop ticking. Now me personally, I prefer this because it allows me to set the exact time faster. Now let's imagine this would be a Rolex. In this case, I would have to wait now 50 seconds until the seconds hand reaches 12 o'clock and then I could start setting the watch. Here, I can start already and just keep an eye on the seconds hand. Now I want to set it, let's say, to 6 o'clock. Now I know, okay, I have 30 seconds left. All right, bit slower, a bit slower, a bit slower. Okay, I'll wait a few seconds until it catches up. Now I'm gonna start approaching 6. I'm gonna stop close to it. We're gonna wait 10 seconds. Okay, let's get closer. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Push it in, we're good. All right. Now with the Rolex, I could start setting right now. With the Patek and the non-hacking movement, I'm already done. Now one thing to consider here is that you cannot just set the correct time. Let's say in this case it would be 20 past 6 and then wait for the seconds hand to reach 12, because also the minute and the hours hand, they never stop moving. So you see, I'm not turning and I'm still in the time setting position, but my minutes hand is still moving. So what I do is I just start setting, wait for the seconds hand to catch up, and when they're aligned, or well, when the seconds hand is at 12 o'clock and my minutes hand and the hour hand of course is in the right position, directly aligned with the index, I push the crown in and we're good to go. All right, that's all I have to say about setting and winding your mechanical watch. I hope this video was useful to you. If yes, please consider subscribing and, well, have a good one. See you next time.